First on the list, we have Ice Mines. So let's go ahead and talk about straight up Ice Mines. So what is Ice Mines best at? You're going to be running to one spam and then anything to counter spam. That is basically the entire meta of Ice Mines. And you'll be seeing a lot of times in ranked, you'll be seeing Dredge bans, Betty bans, Atlas bans, which you'll usually see Atlas bans anyway, but especially Dredge and Betty bans that first phase just because of how strong they are on Ice Mines. So let's go ahead and start up with the top. I'm only doing S down to A because anybody below B or in B is basically just they're fine. They work. Everybody that you see who I haven't put on here is just average. Pick them if you want to. Don't pick them if you don't want to. There's some characters who don't work, such as Yag, Kanessa, Seven Strix, who just literally will not work on Ice Mines if you're playing against people who are playing the game. I guess you can still pick them if you're just trying to have fun, but if you're wanting to play for the win or you're wanting to rank up or climb ladder, then you're not going to be wanting to really pick anybody below A tier. And you're usually going to have at least some of these champions open. So yeah, let's go ahead and just talk about it from S to A. Starting off with S, you're just going to see basically spam. And then from Dredge to Tybee, you're just basically running spam. You're holding down choke points. You're basically just holding the entrance of Barn and Tunnel. And Dredge does it the absolute best because you can spam broadsides with one and then spam the other. And you basically just hold off those 2 points and they're forced to go above Tunnel. And then if you do have another damage character, I would say running double damage on this map is very good. So if you also have a Betty or you also have a Tybee, they can also hold that, and then you just have a ton of free value, and they now have to play completely differently. And so yeah, these three characters are just absolutely insane on this map. You're basically seeing these guys first phase. Tybee, you're not really seeing first phase, both pick and ban, but if he is picked, he's usually somewhere in the bottom, or he can be top picked, but he's never really banned on this map. Both Dredge and Betty, though, are pretty consistently banned on Ice Mines and pick just because of how strong they absolutely are. So if you're playing on Ice Mines, make sure you're picking Dredge and Betty. You'll have the best chance of winning. Next is Atlas. Atlas is just amazing to shut down spam because he just eats the projectiles with his wall. And if he takes so much damage, he just reverses himself in time. And yeah, you just get a ton of free value from Atlas being able to shut down that spam a lot, forcing them out of position or forcing them to different positions. And so you just get a ton of free value from Atlas on this map. Probably one of his best maps just to be able to counter that spam. Even if there is no spam, you can still just run him to control different areas just because of your big wall. Next is Lilith. Lilith just has the advantage of being able to basically hold down, being able to just put Swarm down because of how prolonged fights are in different parts of the map, and that they just get a ton of free value in these enclosed areas, especially when you're running Barn. You just put your Swarm down, you get a ton of free damage and a ton of free healing, and it just allows you to kind of snowball that fight a bit. So yeah, Lilith is absolutely amazing on this map. Next is the A+. This is going to be your almost there champions, but you're going to want to prioritize whoever's an S. First is Tyra. Tyra doesn't have as much as Dredge and Betty or Tib. She can hold down one of the chokes, both on Barn and Tunnel, but she can't hold down the other as well. And so you kind of just want to pick her, shut down the entrance into Barn, and then they're forced to go either under Tunnel or just eat some of that damage, and then you get a ton of free damage and a ton of free pressure. So yeah, Tyrus does have that. Same with Willow. Willow has Ceiling and Dead Zone, being able to just fight, basically force them to fight in Dead Zone because of the massive AoE, and they're going to be just prolonged fights in those specific areas. There's not really too much other places that you can really go, and so just being able to force them to fight in Dead Zone or force them out of position due to Dead Zone, and then getting a free damage with Seedling. And on top of that, you're a Blaster champion, so you get a ton of free splash damage, and then your ultimate does get quite a bit of value because there's a lot of open space, being able to just kind of fly around in those areas, and if you need to fall back, you can, and then you have a bit of cover. Next is Bomb King. Bomb King has a very similar thing to Tyra, where he just throws down Grumpy Bomb and then forces them to fight elsewhere or move out of position or wait for Grumpy Bomb to go down. And yeah, he just controls very good on choke. And on top of that, he has a ton of free area damage. He has very good mobility, and on top of all that, he has his ultimate that's going to do a massive AoE. And so he just kind of rushes in, gets a big stun off, does a ton of damage, and yeah, Bomb King is pretty solid on this map. This is probably one of Ash's better maps because this is, at least for her ultimate, you just basically bounce off of just about anything, especially when you're fighting on point with ult. You basically just hit Barn and you insta drop down. It's the same thing as a Terminus Leap. You just kind of hit the top and drop back down on the doorways, and you get a free 2-second slow. Both of these guys are just absolutely amazing on the map. Both of their shields are going to give you a bit of pressure, being able to kind of walk up with that shield. And with the Terminus, it's very similar, where you just get a ton of Calamity Charge, and then you just have a ton of free damage. And especially with his recent buff, making that Siphon recharge rate faster for each Calamity Charge you hit, you just get your Siphon back up, and you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And also, with the smaller fighting range, you also just get more damage from your melee. And so it's a very good map for his melee. And then you have someone like Grover. So Grover, Grock, Io, Pip, and Damba all have the same function of you just have smaller areas that you're going to fight in, and so you get a ton more value from their healing and their damage. What Pip, Grock, and Damba have is they just basically fight around, or Grock and Damba have, very similar to Lilith, is that they fight around the totems or the gourd, and then they just get a ton of free utility. And especially with Damba, where you can run util cards, and then Grock, you just get a ton of free damage also from your chain lightning ball thing. And then you can just fight in totems, so you get a ton of free healing, ton of free damage. And Dama, you just put down Gourd, you get a ton of free damage, ton of free healing, especially when they're fighting at Gourd, and you can just have a ton of free utility. Pip and Grover just have a ton, or Pip, Io, and Grover all just have a ton of free healing, and basically guaranteed healing, because everybody's really grouped up. You have more places to throw down your Catalyst Potion, getting a free slow, and then just doing a ton more damage. On top of this, your ultimate is also going to be able to hit more people on Pip, because they're all going to be grouped up in a more specific spot. And then Grover just gets a ton more healing because of his Vine, and Blossom just being in a massive ass AoE on top of his already AoE heal. And then his ultimate's just, again, AoE. People are going to be fighting more closer together, and so you're going to get a ton more free healing. Next is Kasumi. You basically just want to run Haunted Grounds on Ice Mines, and it makes her amazing on this map. You basically put them down on choke points, and then you can put them on above tunnel, and then you basically control the entire gateway to getting into point. And so if they go through them, you just TP, you get a free kill, or you at least do a ton of damage. And then if you have to leave, then you can with Body and Soul. And so you just get a ton of free damage. You really just shut down choke points, forces them to either bait them or just kind of eat that stun and get them bound and try to kill you first, but usually you'll be able to kill them. And so Haunted Gas is just kind of crazy. Even on push, when you're when you're pushing, you can put it on both chokes, and then you just TP if they run through them, and if not, then, well, they can't go through them, and you force them into a funnel. So yeah, Kasumi's really good on this map. Next is the A. These are just going to be your above average champions, and the last tier we're going to cover. They're just going to kind of get a free value. There are a few champions who just function really well with zone control, but still have their downside, such as Koa, Omen, and maybe even something like Zan, where they're just going to be very good with zone control, but they still do have a few different things that are going to shut them down, such as Koa. He just has a normal shield. Dredge and Betty both deal with shields insanely well, and so they just kind of blow up the shield. But this character has very good zone control. They walk through barn, you pluck them, they die. They walk through tunnel, you pluck them, they die. The only way they can really play is going above tunnel, but even then you can kind of walk up there and then force your flank to come with you or your damage to come with you, and then you just kind of blow them up anyway. All of these characters just have a very similar thing of just kind of playing around these chokes, getting a lot of free damage. The only one I would say that's really different is like someone like Drogoz, where you just get a ton of Drogoz, Vivian, Koga, and maybe someone like Jhin on his last hit piercing. And so you just have a ton of free damage from those pierces, forcing people to play grouped up, and then you just get a absolutely massive damage, massive guaranteed damage increase, and then also being able to kind of hold different points because you have piercing projectiles such as Koga, Jhin on last hit, and yeah. Vivian is more about her splash damage, and then her booby trap being able to kind of hold the place, forcing them to break it or eat that 600 damage, which is quite a bit of damage. And then Vivian also just has a ton of splash damage. Azan has a lot more places where he can pin because there's so many walls around. And on top of that, he can put up his wall and then basically force somebody to stay inside of an entry point or force them outside to go around somewhere else. Corvus has his ultimate, which is going to force people out of position incredibly. You put it in tunnel. If they're in tunnel, they have to leave. They're on above tunnel, you have to put it up there, and then they leave. You put it there, planting in barn, you put it in barn, they have to leave. So he just has a ton of value from his ultimate. On top of that, you're usually close to your teammates, so you can get a ton more healing off. Same with Furia. You can throw down your Pyro Strike wherever you want, forcing people out of position, forcing them into an uncomfortable spot, and you just get a ton of free damage. Andrew and Drogoz are very similar, where they do have a lot of areas where they can just kind of float around and get a ton of free damage off. Obviously, this does mean that you're prone, but Andrew has the benefit of having reversal, being able to eat a ton of damage if he does need to. And Jhin's just very safe, getting a ton of free damage. Omen is very similar to Koa in the way that he just has very good zone control. You have your ultimate forcing people out of position, it's very similar to a wall almost, where when his ultimate up, you just put it down and they cannot walk through or in it, or else they die. And Nyx is going to have a very good benefit of her royal presence, where she kind of can just walk up, eat a ton of damage, and then if, let's say, you have a Lilith or a Damba, they're just going to heal it up basically really quickly, and so you just ate all of their valuable cooldowns or their valuable damage, and then you have a ton of free space. That is the Ice Mines champion guide almost to it, and so if you guys enjoyed, comment down below and let me know. Drop a sub and a like if you want to see more content like this, and make sure to join the Discord. We're building an absolute amazing community. Link is in the description. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.